Paper bags on heads and sections of empty seats can only mean one thing. An MLB team is terrible. It happens every year, but only a select group of teams can be in the running for the worst MLB team of all time. These are the 5 MLB teams that simply stand out above, or should I say below, the rest.
There were no kids here to chase all those foul balls.
Another one to rattle around in the seats.
Like the Chicago White Sox, who are already a struggling franchise, but their disastrous 2024 campaign was the start of something even worse. Despite the franchise sporting a pretty large fan base over their 124 seasons, they've been quite awful of late, having only made the playoffs 5 times since the turn of the century. But how does a team even get to 121 losses? Well, it starts at the top, because baseball is not a sport that can be dominated by one player like football's Patrick Mahomes or basketball's LeBron James. It takes an army of carefully selected pitchers and hitters to get the job done, a job that GM Chris Getz clearly wasn't qualified for. After coming off a terrible 101-loss season in 2023, Getz put together a team of players that was just, oh, so much worse. In the Sox season opening series, they could only muster 18 hits and 105 plate appearances, and what started out bad only became worse, because in the first 30 games of the season, the Sox were already knocking on fate's door with 24 losses. What followed was another 5 months of agony in Chicago.
The White Sox are 37 and a half games out of first place.
I mean, Captain America was more likely to beat Thanos than the Sox were to make the playoffs. And the fans were quick to realize that. Attendance plummeted throughout the season, and one Reddit post even said, "There are more active hurricanes in the Atlantic than there are fans at today's White Sox game." I think those in attendance have ankle bracelets on and list their address as 35th and Shields. They should have held on to the cardboard fans from COVID. Funny enough, the only games of the season that included a good turnout were in the last week, when fans flocked to the stadium, actually excited to be present when the Sox broke the modern era loss record of 120 games. Fans were so anti-White Sox that when the team miraculously won 3 games in a row while sitting at 120 losses, the fans actually booed the players, hoping instead that the team would move to 121 losses and break the record. While the Sox did in fact break the record, real MLB fans know that if all of baseball history is included, to break the all-time loss record, the White Sox would have actually needed to lose a whopping 135 games, a record that was set by a team who was so bad the franchise literally dissolved after the season. But we'll get to that later in the video, because things got so bad for the 1962 Mets that they are considered to have had the worst expansion team opening year in all of sports history.
Ray Dalio deals, Gus Bell wheels, and New York squeals with one crack of the bat.
Back in the grooving 60s, baseball operated very differently. These days, the Cohens and Steinbrenners of the world can throw a couple $100 million on the table and lock in the greatest talent. But back in the day, free agency did not exist, so you couldn't just sign anybody off the street if you wanted to. Well, actually, that's not entirely true, because that's pretty much what the Mets ended up doing. Since the Mets were an expansion team, they had to rely heavily on the MLB's expansion draft, and the only talent available might as well have been random people on the street. The Mets did their best, but after the draft, their roster essentially looked like the island of misfit toys.
No, Charlie, that's why I'm a misfit toy.
And things were only made worse by their general manager, who filled holes in their roster with Dodgers and Yankees players that were way past their prime. To put it bluntly, the Mets sucked. Their team batting average was .240, their staff ERA was .504, and they had a run differential of -331. The Mets were so bad that a book was written about them called "Can't Anyone Here Play This Game?" While I haven't read it, I don't think anyone could play the game, because the Mets went on to lose 120 games that season and set the then modern era MLB loss record. But if the 1962 Mets were a real clown show, then the Detroit Tigers are a full-on circus, because in 2003, they put on one of the worst baseball performances of all time.
Tigers teammates and best buddies Carlos Pena and Craig Monroe hope the next 3 nights in the Big Apple will be anything but a mission impossible.
As one of the MLB's oldest franchises, the Tigers have suffered quite a bit. The franchise has a World Series record of 4-7 and has not won on baseball's greatest stage in over 40 years. But none of their struggles can even compare to the 2003 season. Second-year GM Dave Dombrowski hadn't done especially well in his previous season with Detroit, going 255 and 106, but nothing could have prepared fans for the 2003 campaign. It starts and ends with the Tigers pitching. The average ERA for the Tigers pitchers that year was 5.32, and the only statistic that one of their pitchers led the league in was Mike Mareth with a league-leading 21 losses and 123 earned runs. The Tigers' problems with pitching were glaring, but it takes two to tango, and Detroit's offense did its part as well. The hitters held a miserable .240 batting average, only scored more than 10 runs in a game once, and got shut out a ridiculous 17 times. Combining these two monstrosities together, and you get a team with a run differential of minus 337, the fourth worst in baseball's modern era. The Tigers were so bad that the Cats live-action movie was a more entertaining program named after a kitty. To end the season, the Tigers finished with a depressing 43 wins and 119 losses, which ranked them as the team with the second most losses in baseball history at the time, and showed just how bad a baseball team can look when it can't contend with even an average MLB franchise. We can find a small silver lining in the fact that the Tigers used their 2004 draft pick to take Justin Verlander, but no silver lining can be found in the collapse of the next team on our list, because the 2018 Orioles took the meaning of losing to a whole other level.
At an empty Orioles park in Baltimore today, the crack of the bat echoed like a controlled explosion.
In the middle of the 2010s, the Orioles were actually a good ball club. In 2012, they were led by Matt Waiters, Adam Jones, and JJ Hardy. In 2013, Manny Machado put together his first superstar season, accompanied by 53 Chris Davis home runs. And 2016 gave the Orioles one of the best bullpen performances in recent memory, with Zach Britton becoming essentially unhittable. Despite all the odds, during those 5 seasons, the Baltimore Orioles were the American League's winningest team. But oh, how far a team can fall. Entering the 2018 season, the Orioles were predicted to go 78 and 84, and boy did they disappoint. Despite maintaining a roster full of recognizable players like Manny Machado, Chris Davis, and Mark Trumbo, the team simply could not hit. The team maintained an OPS of .689, which matched their equally horrible pitching with a 5.19 ERA. An article stated, "There is no one element of this team that has failed to perform. It has been everything." Watching this season unfold every day as an Orioles fan, or participating in it as a player, must have been unbearable. The Orioles put on a horror show about a flying animal that may very well have been scarier than Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. And a season-ending record of 47 and 115 secures them as one of the worst teams of all time. While the Orioles have recovered from this 2018 season by making the playoffs twice in the last 2 years, living through the dark days from 2018 to 2021 must have been literal hell as a Baltimore fan. Now, before we get to the worst team of all time, a team that literally disbanded after their god-awful season, we can't complete this list without a few honorable mentions. So here goes. The 1916 Philadelphia Athletics were just disgusting. They lost a mind-bending 117 games and became an absolute disgrace to their name of athletic. The 1935 Boston Braves should have been called the Boston Cowards because of how they lost 115 games in one season. And somehow, back on our list as a repeat team is the 2019 Detroit Tigers, who lost a ridiculous 114 games in 1 year. These 3 honorable mention teams were just horrid. But believe it or not, they still pale in comparison to the undoubted worst team in baseball history. In 1898, in an act of outrageous collusion, Cleveland Spiders owners Stanley and Frank Robeson bought the St. Louis Brown Stockings and immediately traded all of Cleveland Stars to St. Louis for essentially no return. The Robesons continued to own both the Cleveland and St. Louis teams, but they completely neglected the Spiders. And the 1899 season, the worst in history, is the result. While the terrible statistics for the team do have a nefarious explanation, it doesn't make them any less laughable. The Spiders' winningest pitcher went 4-30, and the team only hit 12 home runs the entire season. Their longest win streak, accomplished just once, was 2 games long, and thanks to many relocated home games, the Spiders recorded 101 road losses, a record that is literally impossible to break. This is a visual representation of the Cleveland Spiders in 1899. After recording the worst run differential in baseball history of -723 and drawing just 6,088 fans the entire season, the Spiders franchise folded, and the 1899 season, including 134 losses, was their final appearance. If there's some solace for the rest of our teams in this video, it has to be that no matter how bad they got, they didn't even come close to catching the Spiders for the title of the worst baseball team ever. But that doesn't take away the fact that all of the teams we discussed were just awful. If I were a fan, I would have had a paper bag on my head all hours of the day. But what we didn't cover in this video is what so often is the cause of these dumpster fire seasons. Spoiler alert, it's usually a boneheaded trade. I mean, the White Sox literally traded away Fernando Tatis Jr. just a handful of years before their 121 loss season. Stick with Batter's Box and watch our video on the 10 worst trades in baseball history to see just how low our least favorite general managers have gone.